So our first question, thank you, that was really marvellous. We've had the pleasure of listening to a few presentations from Vic. This was more than we've heard this week, and it was just wonderful. Thank you. So Vic, here's a question. What advice would you have for university students around linking their studies with their life's purpose? Hands up those in the audience who love someone who's a university student or knows them. Yeah, it's relevant.
Any university students?
Any?
Oh, awesome. Nice. Hi, guys.
That would be Lincoln College, is that right? Yay.
Take a gap year. Go out. And don't go to Paris or London or San Francisco or some awesome city like that because you're as a tourist. Go to sub-Saharan Africa. Go to South America. Go work with people, volunteer with people, volunteer in the outback, volunteer with other people, and learn not only about difficulties and very often sadness and tragedy, but at the same time learn about the joys of living life as if every day might be your last day. The people in sub-Saharan Africa I've worked with are some of the most amazing people I've ever met. I really recommend you go to countries and learn more about people who don't have everything that's material, but have tremendous joy in their hearts, who know how to dance at night, how to sing, how to just enjoy every single thing they have and be grateful for everything they have. Then you're learning something extraordinarily wise. Nietzsche, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, in the beginning had a brief metaphor. He said, take a camel. The camel says, put everything on my back. Load me up. In other words, educate me. Load me with the sorrows and the joys and the compassion and the kindness, but also the sorrow and the suffering of the world. Load me up. And as soon as the camel is laden, the camel transforms into a lion. The lion then goes out into the wilderness and seeks a dragon, and finds a dragon where on every scale has the two words, thou shalt. That's everybody else telling you what your purpose should be. I tell my students, take the resume out that your parents wrote for you and tear it up. Now that pisses off a lot of parents, but it's very important that you become your own human being. You have agency, you are who you choose to be, so be careful who you choose to be, and you are not your parents, so you have to choose what you want to be. That's very important. And by the way, once the dragon is slain by the lion transforms one more time into a child, innocent and able to create their own purpose in life.
Beautiful, thank you. I know that you're trained as a scientist, and something occurred which took you into this life of meaning. Speaking, we got any scientists there in the back of the room? Students? A few, yes. Just have you got something to say about science and purpose?
Well, I just think that with regard to science, so often my colleagues in science, and this is not a rap on science, it's just that so often we want to avoid the things that are soft, the soft sciences. Oh, is sociology or psychology or political science, are those really sciences? Even economics, are those really sciences? I would argue that some of the most important things are sociological and political and psychological and even philosophical, and so we should try to embrace those. The big philosophical questions that do grow up should be answered by scientists, and we should be able to figure that out and work collectively with philosophers and with social scientists to start adding to a true body of knowledge of the things that are most important. I believe that some of the most ephemeral things in our society, self-transcendence, purpose in life, are the most important things in our society, and quite honestly, if we don't study them in the 21st century, I don't think we're going to have a 22nd century, because science needs to start figuring out what it means to be a human being.
Thank you, Vic. Here's a big question. What is the key to writing transcendent state policy? Thank you.
Hey, you know what? I come from a country that is having trouble with things like that right now. I think you're the one to answer that, okay?
David,
I'm sorry, but I am not the expert, and I certainly didn't come from, I mean, I would say go to Adelaide and learn. The real idea here is, thinking about what I love about what David Pearson has been talking about with a purpose economy. An economy is a transaction. It's all about transaction. And typically we think about economy as a transaction of money, services and goods, and that's fine. But a purpose economy is trying to have transactions between communities and and governments and not-for-profits, for-profits, people, and having those transactions work well together and purposefully so that people collectively build stronger purposes in their lives and become better. So that's what I think a transcending state policy would be thinking about. I heard Jay Weatherall the other day, and I was quite honestly just blown away by how cool he thought about this, that he said there needs to be balance between community and business. I think that's very important.
And you may not all know that this state does have a whole of government state wellbeing policy, and there's an equivalent level of policy development in education and a number of other agencies as well. So that policy journey is underway in relation to wellbeing. Here's one. Can you describe the role of creativity as fuel for transcending limiting patterns and fixed states?
Wow, what a great question.
Thank you very much.
Who asked that? That was awesome. Wow. Yeah, I love that.
Very creative artist
I'm huge
in our
into
community.
creativity. You know, we do a lot of brain research on creativity, and the brain kind of has a governor in it saying, okay, I have this stray thought, and the governor says, oh, don't think that, don't go there. And, Edward Degas, the French painter, once said, painting a painting is like committing a criminal act. When you think about that, you're moving from status quo to something totally different. My very good friend Monty Montgomery is a Hollywood Screenwriter Guild writer, and he's also a children's book writer, and he wrote a book called Hubert Invents the Wheel. And it dates back to ancient Mesopotamia, and Hubert is dragging a sledge along filled with rocks, along with his pet donkey. And his friends are all doing the same thing, and their parents had done the same thing. And then he looks at a couple rocks and he notices that they're round. And he then tapped some holes in them and he put a stick through them and he created the wheel and he created an axle, and then he started just rolling these along and he said, wow, this is great. So what did his friends and the community say? They said, did they make him a hero? He said, no, you're lazy. What are you thinking? Your dad dragged the sledge. We drag the sledge. This is what we do. We've always dragged the sledge. It's so lazy of you. In other words, innovators are very often derogated and criticized for being lazy or in some way not really, the way we want them to be in society. Carl Jung, who really diverged from Sigmund Freud, most of what Sigmund Freud said has turned out to be wrong, but what Carl Jung, when he diverged, Sigmund Freud kind of left him aside. And Jung, in his memoirs, said, I had to follow my inner daemon, and everybody else must have only seen a fool rushing ahead. That's what creativity is all about. It's a fool rushing ahead. It's a person willing to do something, moving from status quo to that next step. It takes tremendous courage to be creative.
So is that something we need to do as a city and a state, foster and support people when they take that risk?
One thing I've heard many times, and I have no judgment about this, is that Adelaide is not a risk-taking city, that it's kind of a status quo city. I really don't know whether that's true or not, because I really have fallen in love with Adelaide. But I will say that innovation requires this courage to create, courage to innovate, courage to try new things, and especially courage to fail, to screw something up, but then return back, pivot, say, I've got a better idea now based on that. Rather than building a Gantt chart and, planning for 2 years and then figuring it out, that never works then, right? But if you just try new things, small things, see if they work, pivot, do it again. That's what I love. That's why I want to work with you, because that's how you think.
Thank you. In the act of measuring purpose, is there a risk of being so obsessed with data that we lose sight of our bigger transcendent purpose? How can we avoid that?
Well, let me go back to Socrates. He said the unexamined life is not worth living. Data can help us. It doesn't drive how we examine, or necessarily should drive how we examine our lives, but it's a tool to help us examine our lives if we assemble the data properly. So I'm not worshiping data here, but I am saying we have this tremendous resource now, and set of resources in how we monitor ourselves, how we monitor our environment, and how we monitor our communities, and we ignore a lot of data. We say in the U.S. data.
Potato.
Sorry. So we ignore a lot of the data. So I would say, as Socrates said, we should examine our lives as best we can. But then, as Aristotle said, a purposeless life is not worth examining in the first place. So I think this is a yin-yang.
Thank you. You've talked to us tonight about how a strong transcending purpose is good for our health and well-being, but not all purposes are noble. For example, Adolf Hitler had a transcending purpose. How can we make sense of this?
It's a very, very good question, and thank you for the person who asked it. ISIS certainly has a transcending purpose. They're willing to blow themselves up. That's a pretty big purpose. So they certainly believe in it. Nietzsche was right, though, I think, in saying you need to be a camel that is fully laden, that is educated, before you go out and create your own purpose. Now, a lot of religions provide manuals that give us a reasonably good purpose, and most of those traditional religions are based on the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which makes perfect sense. But a lot of people decide to get in the kitchen and start cooking before they've read a cookbook, before they've learned to cook. And I would say, if you don't know how to cook and don't have a cookbook, stay out of the kitchen. So it's very important to think about. Purposes are really important, and philosophy is a dangerous thing. We have to be careful about how we help people find purpose.
That links us to
Great question.
Yeah, it was a great question. Next question. How can an individual identify his or her purpose in life easily?
Start with the things that matter most to you. Think about whether you could set goals around them. One thing that I might recommend is what a colleague, Rachel Raymond at the University of California, San Francisco, has said, that often your purpose is right next door. It's right around you. It's the person next to you. It's the things that are going on immediately in your community. It may be related even to this and what we're doing right now. So think about your purpose not as something you have to meditate in a cave for 6 months for.
Thank you. Listen, it's tragic, but we have to stop listening to these great questions and even greater answers and begin to wind up. But just something I'd like to announce before we begin. Most of you know that the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre is committed to the development of high-quality coaching, online coaching and measurement resources and training. I'm proud to announce tonight with Vic that the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre will be working with you to develop new training and coaching resources that will support individuals, organisations and communities to develop purpose. So partly in answer to that query.
We're so happy to be working with you.
Thank you, and I'm equally proud to announce that we are entering into a memorandum of understanding with Dr. Strecher and Dual Health to bring the Dual Health product to Australia.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Well, that's very exciting news, and you guys stay there if you like. And I get the pleasure of doing the thank yous and wrap-ups. So to start with, Vic, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. If we can all express our appreciation. You've been an absolute joy to work with over the last 3 weeks, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to you and Jerry for the way you've engaged in this visit and for sharing the most personal of stories tonight that helped you find your purpose, but that will help all of us to better understand the meaning and the value of purpose and how we can find it in our own lives. So thank you so much. In lieu of gifts for tonight, what we've done is there's a micro donations platform in South Australia called Good Thanks. So we've made a donation to Good Thanks on your behalf. You'll get an email and you can donate that gift to a charity that's near and dear to your heart and saves the space in your suitcase on the way home. But really, a couple of other few thank yous. I just wanted to thank the staff of the Dunstan Foundation and of the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre for putting on this amazing event. Thank you, you've done a great job. Well done. And again, thank you to all the partners of both the Thinkers program and the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre. Without the support of the partners that we've got in this process, as I said before, with the Thinkers program in particular, we're not run by the government anymore. We are only able to run because of the generous support of the partners like the Universities of Adelaide and Flinders and a range of many other partners. So a big heartfelt thank you to them. And thank you all of you for being here in the weather that's a bit crazy as you go out there sort of later on tonight and for the heat today. But thank you for being here. I hope you've enjoyed it. The Don Dunstan Foundation's purpose is to inspire action for a fairer world, and we hope that tonight has given you that inspiration to find your purpose and to help others find theirs and to instill a greater sense of purpose in the communities and the city that you live in. And there's no greater organisation than the Wellbeing and Resilience Centre to get involved with, and the many other organisations that are involved in the Thinkers program. So we hope that you do take action from what you've heard tonight and instill that sense of purpose and get involved in the great things that are going on in our state and in our city. So thanks again for being here and have a great night.